Over this last weekend, I had an opportunity to talk about conflict and what that conflict does within us. Now, it's interesting that we look at conflict in a variety of ways. Sometimes for us, it can be empowering, it can push us, it can motivate us, like perhaps in athletics where we get into a competitive environment and we rise to that occasion. We become more. We look at it and we give our all. We give everything we have to give in order to get there. Sometimes, however, the conflict can become damaging and we don't know how to handle it. And so it diminishes who we are, what we do, or what we think in that moment anyway. Why are we oftentimes in conflict? Conflict with our own thoughts, conflict with our own desires, conflict with the things that we think we really want. In reality, that conflict simply is dragging, it's pulling us, it's keeping us in a certain place. I want you to think about the private experience that you have. How do you feed that private experience? Do we feed it with thought? Do we feed it with constant great things that help us rise up, that help us be better? Preeminent athletes oftentimes see their success, they see their victory before it ever happens. Michael Jordan could see a shot going in the basket before he ever took it. He could see his own maneuvers on the court before he ever made them. The sense of visualization, the sense of seeing what it is that we're after before we actually get there, that is a huge win when we can practice that process. The flip side of that, however, can be very damaging. When we see the conflict, when we see the doubt, when we see the things that will actually hold us back or that act as a wall in front of us. You know, there are times where we can be internally conflicted. I see this all the time. It's one of the things that truly holds people back, and it's one of the things that pushes people into very, very dark places. So let's talk about this. It is not uncommon for people to move away from things that they know that are good for them, they know will be helpful for them, but they move away from it anyway because of the internal conflict that's happening inside. So sometimes it manifests in eating disorders. Sometimes it manifests in bad behavior or bad decision making. Sometimes it manifests in addiction. These are all things where people are struggling to move away from something, and what that's doing is actually creating a worse problem for themselves because they're internally conflicted. In other words, oftentimes my behaviors don't match my values. That internal conflict, that one single internal conflict where my behaviors or my actions are not in alignment with what I truly value inside. And so in order to deal with that, there are times I have to turn one side or the other off. I turn this side off, I forget my goals, I forget my dreams, I forget my passions, and I just go on living life. And that's not a place that any of us want to be or want to go. We're not created in that way. That's not what we're here for. Now, personally, I believe that there is a very real force that creates that contention, creates that conflict inside of us. In fact, his entire desire is for you to be miserable. That whole purpose, his whole purpose, is to breed that doubt, breed that misery inside of you so that you do not fulfill the potential that you have. That internal conflict that we're feeling when our behavior is different than our values keeps us repressed. It keeps us in a place where we cannot move forward. I've seen this repeatedly in my faith, where people move away from the church, they move away from God, they move away from Christ because they believe that their behaviors are so overpowering, so overwhelming, that they could no way be accepted in that environment, accepted by God. And that is a complete and utter lie. The adversary will tell that story to keep us from moving forward, to keep us from having the private experience that would actually compel us to where it is that we're intended to go, intended to be. It's so damaging, it's so hurtful, it's so bad that we would stop going to the source of energy because our behaviors have become overpowering. Our behaviors are conflicting with our values. Now, there are ways through this. There are ways that we can rise above whatever it is that we're behaving. And there are helps that allow us to get there. So if you're having conflict within your private experience, if your behaviors and your values are not necessarily aligned at this moment, and everybody's are off every once in a while, mine have already been off today. If our behaviors and if our values are not necessarily aligned, our first step is to work at resolving the conflict. And the first process of that is understanding the origin of the conflict. Once we get a handle on that, once we understand its origin, and we understand that conflict is going to be in opposition to what it is that we're truly all about and what we're truly there to do, then we can call upon the strength that we need and begin to move our lives forward in such a way that we can actually accomplish and become what it is that we're meant to be. We can resolve that internal conflict. That is a process of peace. We want to get to peace, right? We want our private experience to be one of peace and contentment. That peace and contentment comes when we live our behaviors in accordance with our values. And that is not easy. It's a constant thing that we have to continue to work for. But as we strive, as we work in that direction, that peace will come, even though we're not perfect in that process. And you know what? We aren't going to be perfect in the process. Not us by ourselves. We cannot be. Keep pushing forward. Keep understanding that that conflict that you're feeling inside is real. That conflict that you have can be positively motivating. Know that there are those out there who do not want you to succeed, who do not want you to be all that you were intended to be. We'll push them aside. We'll put them in another place and continue to move forward, continue to believe and know that we are more than just our behaviors in this moment. We have this set of understandings, this set of values. And you know what? If you're not solid over here, then there's ways to work on that as well. That's not discouraging. That's encouraging when we recognize it and realize, okay, there's a place for us to go. There's something for us to do. Get in alignment. Get in alignment here. Get in alignment here. Get in alignment with God. Everything works so much better. Your private experience can and will be all that it was intended to be when we strive in that direction. Thank you so much for being with me. I do appreciate it. I'll see you on the next Primacy Podcast.